And I believe we are.
Yeah, it says the webinar is being live streamed.
There we go. All right. Look at us. A minute before showtime. It's like Pablo's going to be so proud of me. This is great. Oh, man. Let's see. What else? I think we got it all squared away.
Do you let everybody in? They're probably popping in.
Yeah, so they have this like waiting room now. So as soon as I go live now, I guess that lets everybody in. It's
Oh,
pretty cool. We have like 20, 30, 40 folks that are showing up like early every time now. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing," you know? I mean, we've been getting, 100 people on every show recently. I
which
mean,
is good.
it's cool and it's it's the right people. It's not, we don't spend ad dollars to like fill it. It's just like the hope and the dream has been more Leslie and Leslie's friends, to join. And I think that's been
Now,
pretty
the in
cool.
real life meetups helped really that you
Yeah.
started in the pandemic, and then now people know each other, and
Yeah.
having the nicknames helps, I think.
Yeah. All right,
I
my
mean,
friend, you
they
ready to
may
do
not
this?
know my name, but they'll know I'm the real estate maven.
That yes, they do. Yes, they do. All right, Maven, you ready to rock? I'm ready to
I
go
am.
live if you are. Okay.
Yep.
Here we go. Oh, and let me actually turn off my emails because that could be there we go. Up. Hang on one second here. Minute before showtime. It's like Pablo's gonna be. All right, there we go. And now we're gonna go live. All right, welcome everybody to the weekly edition of the Not Your Average Investor Show. I'm your host, Greg Cohen. Our normal and amazing co-host Pablo is not here today. He's off gallivanting and crushing a conference. So you got the B Squad host here today, but boy, do we have an incredible show for you. We have a show, which I'm going to introduce our guests in just a second here. But today we're going to be talking about minimizing your tax bills and maximizing your lifestyle. And as I mentioned, I have one of our very best friends of the Not Your Average Investor community here with us today. She is a super successful rental property investor. She hails from the mountains of Denver, Colorado. She is a JWB client. She's been a client for about 4 years now. And in that time, she's built up a portfolio of 10 single family turnkey rental properties with JWB. She's known as the real estate maven, and you're going to understand why, because not only does she love tax savings as much as I do, but she has built an incredibly successful portfolio and just a wonderful lifestyle. So we are so excited to have you, Miss Leslie Wilson. Welcome to the show.
Hi, everybody.
Well, as I mentioned, we are super pumped. This tax, like, if you want to get me fired up for a show or, to go on a date with my wife, just like mention the word tax savings. And I believe it's one of those things that people just have no idea about, but it is something that it matters so much when you own a rental property portfolio for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. Sooner or later, you figure it out. So, Leslie, we're super pumped to have you to help us figure it out today.
Oh, I'm happy to be here.
Well, we are happy to. And you know who else is happy out there? The community. We're going to kick it off with a little something called the roll call,
Roll
baby. Are you
call.
ready?
I'm ready.
All right, let's see who is loud and proud in the roll call here. We're going to start from the top. And we have our wonderful community manager, Johanna, in the chat. She is here to help everybody. As you guys can tell, Pablo's not here. And so today, I'm going to be trying to help in the chat as much as possible, but I am going to miss things. So if it's something that you would like to ask a question about, please put it in the Q&A. That's really the only way I'm going to be able to bring your questions to Leslie and to myself today. And Johanna is here to help with anything that you need. Put it in the chat. She's here to help. We also have the ringmaster, Andrew Barnhill, stepping in today, past guest and incredible member of our community. We have the world famous composer. You know who the world famous composer is, Leslie?
John, uh, John
There you go.
Williams.
There you go. You
John
got it. The
Williams.
world famous composer, John Williams. We have Reggae Francais from the Inland Empire. Ode to Pablo there. I hope I did that one well. We have the early bird, Mr. Dean Curry, checking in. We've got Christopher Lee from Fernandina Beach checking in. Man, this chat is rolling. Oh, we have Gary and Rosalind Riley from Murrieta, California. We regard you.
We regard you.
We have Jen Jones. Jen Jones. I think that is a new name.
A new name.
Welcome to the community, Jen. Pull up a seat, make a friend, say hello in the chat. You're going to find a very welcoming community here. We have our Maven saying hello in the chat. So awesome that you are just such a member of this community. I know everybody's here to support you and love on you here. We have Jay Kurup, who longtime client of JWB and came to the summit not too long ago. We got to reconnect. We have the leadoff hitter, John Henning, batting 8th or 9th today. Super pumped to have you there, John. We've got Rafi. Rafi is a new client and friend of Pablo. And Rafi, you are a friend to everybody here. Glad to have you here. We've got Ed LinkedIn Lowry showing up here. We've got Alex Diaz. Alex came from as a client and came to Summit as well. We have the best smile in the Pacific Northwest, Miss Pamela Myers, saying hello to everybody. Man, oh, we've got your fellow Coloradan. We've got the mountain man, Billy Green, from the mountains of Colorado over there. We have Melrose Joanna, not a new name, but a newer name. Melrose, thank you for coming. We hope that you continue to come back. Freddie Rapina, welcome, welcome, welcome. Richard Drennan, boy, Linda Mercurio, new JWB client who also came to the summit and becoming a mainstay in our community here. Oh, we have the first family of the Not Your Average Investor show, Ken and Carolyn Moline. We salute you. Raj Bantu saying hello. Jeff Mirinkow, my buddy Jeff, who came to Summit. Man, we have an awesome, awesome chat lighting it up here. And this chat is for you guys. I know part of the reason you guys come to the show is to learn from folks just like Leslie and myself, but a lot of it is just to be here with your friends. And the chat is a great way to get to know everybody if you haven't said hello yet. How do we do on that roll call, Les?
I think we did good.
Yeah, you got a lot of people out there love you. So let's kind of just open it up and hear a little bit about the Leslie story. This is one that I have gotten to know as I think our friendship has come right along the lines of the show. I think it was about 4 years that you became a JWB client, and we started the show about 5 years ago. So I've gotten to know you a little bit, and I am just so impressed every time I get to speak with you and learn a little bit more about you. But let's tell the people a little bit about your journey and how you got to where you are today.
Well, I started out as an accidental landlord helping a friend who was going through a divorce. And her home sale fell apart at the last minute because the buyer decided to quit his job. And when the title company called to verify the employment, his employer said, well, no, John quit on Wednesday. And so she had already transferred all the utilities, her moving truck was packed, and it broke my heart. And I said, well, Michelle, if you'll take 10 grand off the price, I'll buy it. I had no idea. And she had been in real estate, and she said, if you'll do that, I'll find you a great tenant. And so that's how it started. And then I had a good W-2 job in Phoenix, Arizona, and I was clicking along. And then all of a sudden I got my first tax refund. And I had no idea what the depreciation deduction would do for residential real estate. So that's when I first became aware of the tax savings part to owning residential real estate. And so I have added to my portfolio. I've moved states from Arizona to Colorado, and I painfully thought that, oh, well, I didn't want to be an out-of-state landlord. I needed to have something here in Colorado. So I sold the house in Phoenix. I bought another rental house here in Denver. And when I met with my accountant, I got the opportunity to pay about a $15,000 capital gain tax over the appreciation. And I said, wait a minute, I reinvested the money in 60 days. Why am I? Well, it's because I touched the money. It wasn't like the Roth IRA or the IRA, you know, where you can touch the money for a little bit of time. So that's when I learned about the 1031 exchange. So then I started building my residential real estate portfolio here in Colorado. And I came across Fortune Builders, and I met you, Greg, at one of the Fortune Builders meetings. And I thought I had just gotten in with another group where I'd invested. It was called the Real Estate Education Group. What a bunch of fraudsters. And so I thought, I'm just going to watch this Greg Cohen for a while. So I watched you for like 4 or 5 years, only to see the price of the houses go higher and higher. And finally, during the pandemic, when I found this show, I thought, okay, I think I feel comfortable enough. I'm going to pull the trigger. So one of the things that I did is I did a cash out refinance on some of my Denver properties, and I got my little pile of investment money together and I went shopping. And so now I'm up to 10 properties. And because of this show, I've learned about the 5 ways you make income from a rental house. And some of those, even along in my studies and with fortune builders and the Rich Dad Robert Kiyosaki training that I've had, I never thought about the principal pay down. And so now I keep on my spreadsheets, I have a little line item for the principal pay down. But one of the things that I like to do is I like to look at the difference between my marginal tax rate that my accountant puts on my tax return. And then once we add in all the business expenses and deductions, what's the effective tax rate? And so how this show idea came up is when I had my portfolio review, you have 35% as the estimated tax rate for the tax savings part of the income. And I thought, well, anybody who invests in real estate certainly wouldn't have an effective rate of 35%. And then I got curious. I wondered what it was. And so I built a little spreadsheet on myself every year. What was my total income? Then what was the depreciation adjustment? What's my adjusted gross income? The taxable income, after you have all your deductions, what actual tax I paid, the marginal rate, and then the effective rate.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought, I bet all the not your average investors are going to be like me and have way lower tax savings than that 35%.
Mm-hmm.
So
Well, and that's where the show was born. So if any of you out there wonder how we come up with show ideas, the first and best way for Pablo and I to come up with a show topic is to hear from you. So literally, Leslie was on the phone with her JWB portfolio manager, and she said, "Hey, you know what? I really love my tax savings here." She says, "And I don't feel like everybody really understands it. What do you think about us doing a show?" And less than 2 weeks later, we're here. So shout out to anybody who has show topics. If you want to be a part of this, even if you want to be on the show, reach out to your JWB portfolio manager, or you can send an email. You can just send an email to info@jwbcompanies.com, and we'll try to put this show together. But there was a lot there that, man, I just can't wait to dive in a little bit more. I think a couple of things jump out to me when I think about your story, Leslie. I think about how you're sitting here now and you're living this incredible lifestyle that I hope we get to share a little bit more of here on the call. But it wasn't always easy for you. You stubbed your toe a number of different times. And I think those are the greatest moments of growth if you have the right attitude. So, in that story where it started sort of by happenstance and you solving a friend's problem, but maybe didn't really know or you weren't very strategic about how you were going to get to the end result, up until now, what were some of the biggest challenges, either physically or mentally, that you had to overcome in order for you to be able to invest in rental properties?
I would say the biggest challenge was managing them myself. I didn't have a team and I didn't understand that real estate really is a team effort. And so I thought I was focused on the cost. I was tripping over dollars to pick up the pennies. And I thought, well, I can just manage it myself and I'll save myself the 10% property management fee. And so then I thought, well, wait a minute, there might be a safety thing involved. Like if I'm meeting people at night to show my rental house, and what if they're a bad person? So then I talked a friend into investing in rental real estate with me, and we paired up in that we wouldn't go to meet a prospective tenant by ourselves, and we'd always have two people. And she had a great W-2 job. She showed me her tax return once. And I was gobsmacked at how much money she paid to the federal government. It was over $15,000. And her only deduction was her 401k contribution. And I immediately thought, oh my gosh, I have never paid that much, and I had a not as good a job as she did, but a pretty good job. And so I said, you really need to invest in rental real estate. So we went to the edge of town where they were developing new homes and we bought directly from the builder. I mean, we weren't very sophisticated at all. So we had a mortgage, we had $100 a month positive cash flow. And this friend of mine just was like, $100 a month, that's nothing. I'm not going to get rich doing this, $100 a month. And I tried to explain to her about the depreciation deduction. She just didn't get it.
Yeah.
And I said, well, just wait, give it time. And meanwhile, we split the fence costs between each other because we bought two houses side by side. And we had a lot of fun. We hung the window treatments, we interviewed the applicants and it was going pretty well. And then all of a sudden she did her taxes. And for the first time in her life, she got a $4,500 tax refund. She had never gotten one before. And so then she called me up and said, okay, Leslie, now I get it. Now
Yeah.
I see how we can make money through real estate.
Yeah. It's like, I've really just become convinced over the almost 20 years that I've been investing and seeing others with varying degrees of success and failure in this. And it's like the desire to focus and to put the work in to understand how this works for a lot of folks is there. It's just misguided,
Yeah.
right? You talked about stepping over the dollars to pick up the pennies, right? Your focus was misguided. All of our focus in the beginning was misguided. It's very similar to people only focusing on net rental income, right? There's 5 ways that this pays you, and net rental income is actually one of the smallest contributors to your wealth over a full market cycle. So it's like we've got this beautiful asset class. We've got a country that wants a solution. People are willing to put the work in. They're even willing to pay large sums of money to learn how to do this, me included. And I believe you too, Leslie. Like the desire's there, the effort's there. We're even willing to pay for it. But it's just our focus is misguided. And many times that leads people down a path of taking this beautiful asset class and it not being successful for them.
Yeah, Benjamin Franklin said, if you take the quarter out of your pocket and you put it into your mind will fill your pocket back up with quarters.
I love that. I
And
love
so
that.
I thought, okay, I would rather pay somebody to teach me the right way. And Greg, you don't charge for any of this. This webcast is free.
There you
And the
go.
information that I've learned from you and from the other investors is priceless to me.
I mean, I remember, so I don't know if I've ever shared this on the show, but it's probably about 10 or 15 years ago. And, I'm a student of Fan Merrill and Fortune Builders, and they have this wonderful real estate investing education program, of which I was their very first student. So I know how valuable real estate education can be. And I had a decision to make 10 or 15 years ago if I wanted to go down that path. And, at that point, we were also helping people build a real estate portfolio. And, so it was really clear to me which one I wanted to do. I always loved the idea of somebody building up enough trust with somebody for them to give me their money, and then for me to manage that and give them a lot more back, over the long haul. I love that the trade of the trust and then, under promising and over delivering. And then the real estate education space, the whole different trade. And, you can have great
There's some
education.
snakes in there.
Yeah, you sometimes there's not great education, but you can have great education. But the outcomes really aren't in the educator's control, And so
Right.
I've always loved the fact that this is free. This is high level education. When you get to meet super successful investors like Leslie, you don't have to pay for it. And at the same time, you can find an investment that's going to make you a great return on your money. So I think I'm super happy that I chose the path I did, which is not selling real estate education. I think it's made all the difference for us. But lest I digress, let's talk about what people came here to understand, which is more about minimizing your tax bill. Can you, and I love that you have your spreadsheet. If you can give people maybe just some insight, let's kind of start high level and just in your own words, when we say tax savings, what are we talking about for rental properties? And then take it as granular as you'd like to go.
Well, I think, and it is a hard concept to try to explain because I tried to explain it to my friend and she just didn't get it until she got that IRS refund check in her hand because that
Hmm.
was real money. And that's usually when it gels. And that's why I think it's good to just experience this as you go along and have trust and faith that it will work out. And one of the things that Dan Merrill said is that, don't work so much in your business, work on your business. And that was a concept that was foreign to me because I was the house cleaner, the leasing agent, the property manager. I had a whole backstory for the Denver houses that I owned, in that, I'm just the property manager and I am representing the owners. And because normally when I first started out, I was so proud and I said, you're talking to the owner and I'm the owner. And all of a sudden, the tenants, I started having more problems with them because they would want to break on the rent or they'd want to swap, some handyman thing they could do for lower rent. And I didn't know what their painting skills were. And I just thought, no, I don't think so. And it just worked a lot smoother if I positioned myself as the property manager. Well, then when I learned to work on my business and not in my business, one of the biggest mistakes that people who manage their own properties make is you lose sight of what the market rent really is. You try to look at Zillow and Rentometer and these online tools. And when I started, it was before the internet. I am really old now. And so we just had to, like, dialing for dollars, call people and say, what are you charging for rent? And it
Hmm.
was a guessing game. Now things are a lot more automated. But another thing that I realized is I was paying retail for all of my repairs and my improvements when I would buy carpeting or appliances. And a professional property manager gets trade discounts, they do volume pricing. Um, and a lot of times, I don't know what it is about these house cleaners, but my Denver property manager, I'll walk into these properties and I'm thinking, they clean this oven better than I could clean. And
Hmm.
at the time, I would pay extra. It was $100 more to get the oven with the self-cleaning feature. But because I was the house cleaner, I would pay the $100 more for the self-cleaning oven because I was the cleaner.
Yeah.
And then I saw this cleaner that the property manager handled, and I was like, wow. So you can leverage your time better. And that is when I started, once I got rid of the day-to-day property management and leasing duties, then I could focus on my overall portfolio and growth. And that's when I could look at, okay, what's my gross income? What's my net income after the mortgages are paid and the repairs and the expenses and property management? And then what's my net income for the marginal tax savings? And just the highest tax rate that I ever had was after my father died and I inherited some life insurance money. I had loaded him up with life insurance. And so all this money came to me tax free, which was really nice. I started out as a financial planner, so I learned how to do that. And everybody says, when you're grieving, don't make any big financial decisions. Just allow yourself time to grieve. So I got this money and I thought, well, okay, I paid off all my mortgages and I was quiet for a year. And I really loved my dad and I missed him terribly. And then all of a sudden it came time to do my taxes, and I had the highest tax bill I'd ever had because I'd just gotten rid of all my deductions. I paid them all off. So now I
Hmm.
understand I'm not afraid of mortgages now. Even though I'm almost 65, I'm going to die with these mortgages because if the tenant helps pay them off and the federal government is encouraging me to do that, why not? Now I'm not
Hmm.
crazy. I don't have, it's like a 50-50 ratio. They're not, I'm not just cutting it to the edge,
Right.
But I think you can really get farther faster if you can learn to manage your federal tax bill.
Yeah, it's like shifting that focus on the things that really equate to wealth, right? Many people are like, oh, geez, I want to find a property manager, but I want to go on the cheap. And I
Right.
only want to pay a 8% property management fee. And they spend all of their time in negotiating, trying to find somebody, and eventually they do. When if they found the best service, the most value, and we're comfortable paying market rates, let's just say that's 10%, and then spent that amount of time focusing on how do you minimize your biggest expense, which your taxes might be 30%, 40% of all of your income. How do you spend your focus on that? Then you can have the outcomes that you really want. Let's so let's let's talk about that example because I think there's probably some questions about well, let me actually I'm going to give a kind of an overview of what we mean by tax savings, and then the world famous composer John Williams has a question for you about W-2 income and passive income and taxes. And then I think let's get a little bit more granular on what you mean by taking your effective tax rate down, because that's
Okay.
a new concept. We haven't really talked about that much on the show. So for anybody who's new or hasn't heard a lot about tax savings when it comes to rental properties, first of all, thank you for being here. It's awesome that you tuned into a show with tax savings in the title. So good on you. What we're talking about here is going from your revenue, your gross rental income, all the rent that you receive, and then what you're actually taxed on. And there's a big difference in rental properties with what you earn in gross rental income versus what your net rental income is, which is your net is what you're taxed on. And that delta there, those are deductions that you get to take. And that takes you from gross to net. Those are a part of the tax savings that we're talking about. And it's really, really important. These are the things you might have heard about, right? Leslie, what are some of the common deductions out there? Your interest expense. What else?
Oh, well, your property management fee,
Yep.
if you have turnover costs, repair, maintenance expense, servicing the furnace, anything that you do to that property becomes a business deduction for that rental house. So when you just have a W-2 job, I think your only deduction really is your retirement contributions. And
Exactly.
you're taxed on the gross and you don't really have a lot of control over that. But once you invest in rental real estate, you're taxed on the net. And so you have a lot more control over what your bottom line tax bill is going to be because you have all these deductions that you don't have in your regular life.
And the deductions are more than that. You know, neither Leslie nor myself, we're not CPAs. So
Yeah,
fair warning, we're both just successful real estate investors who have received significant deductions, and we can help you here. Go to a CPA if you'd like all the specifics on the tax deductions. But, you know, a lot of folks, Leslie came to the summit. A lot of folks who are here on the show came to summit. You know, if you do it the right way, you can even write off your travel bills to go and visit your rental properties and go and consult with your property management company. I would imagine many tax deductions even happened by people that were coming to Summit. So there's a whole lot there, and that takes you from your call it $1,500 a month of gross rental income down to whatever you might be taxed on. And so that's about, let's call that like step one of two when it comes to tax savings. That's exciting, but the second part of it, I think, is even more exciting.
I agree.
And the first part is like, listen, I want to go from gross to net, and I want to get these deductions, but you know what? I had to spend the money on the repair cost. I had to spend the money paying for the interest expense. I had to spend the money for my property management costs. So we like the fact that there's a deduction there, but you know, with pretty much everything, you have to spend the money. Like, how cool would it be if there was a way where you could just get the deduction without having to spend the money? A
That doesn't work.
non-cash deduction, right? Well, as ridiculous as that sounds, that's what you also get with a single family rental property.
The
And it's
depreciation deduction.
there we go, the depreciation deduction. And that's why this is so cool. And I love explaining it this way because it's so rare out there. But really, what the IRS says is that your property is going to break down over time. Things break over time. And they have said, and the standard deduction is that your property is going to break down, the building will break down over 27 and a half years. And so the IRS says, well, we're going to give you a deduction. Whether or not there's any actual cost that year, we're going to give you a deduction. And that deduction can also write off against your net rental income. So what you're left with, and this is super powerful, by the way, this might be a 4, 6, 7,000 depreciation deduction each year for your rental property. So it's extremely common for JWB clients to be cash flow positive, but not pay taxes on any of that rental income. And the secret sauce is step one, which is all those deductions, but then step two, which is the depreciation deduction. Leslie, how did I do with explaining that? Does that ring true? Did I miss anything there?
No, and I think another thing that you might add is your deductions, the depreciation deduction can offset your other income, your W-2 income. And that's what was so powerful for my friend is it was just the depreciation deduction of the rental house that gave her that refund. Plus, some maintenance and repair expenses thrown in as well. But otherwise, that money would have just gone to the IRS and she'd never see it again. And so
So
it kind of helps me keep my properties up to know that the federal government's kind of helping me offset some of that cost through the tax savings that I get at the end of the year.
I love it. Love it. We've got a few questions that are firing in now. And thank you guys for your questions. We'll be here. We've got about a half hour left on the show. So if you'd like to get your questions answered, fire those into the Q&A. I cannot see the chat right now. Too much going on right now. And I'm not as skilled as Pablo. So throw them into the Q&A. But we've got the world famous composer, John Williams, and he asks about your W-2 income and taxes. So he says, Leslie, how do you transition from a W-2 income to using passive income to save on taxes? You want to take a stab at that one?
Well, I'm still adjusting to it because I'm still trying to understand since I have no more active income, I all of my income comes once a month when my tenants pay their rent, is now I'm subject to the alternative minimum tax. And that is a real gray area for me. And each year I try to sit down with my accountant and it's different every year. Some years I get hit with it, some years I don't. Some years I have to practically rebuild those properties I have in Detroit. I don't know what it is with the tenants up there, but they just live hard. And so I've had some huge expenses with that. And then other years, everything's steady, Freddy going. It's kind of like when I have turnover with the Jacksonville properties, that's not as often. It's not every year. And so I can smooth it out. And so when I'm in the first year of my Jacksonville tenants, hey, there's not much really to do. I just pay the property management and maybe, a service call here and there, but most of that is income. So, the
Yeah.
W-2 in a way I thought about going back because it really is so much easier to get a mortgage when you have a W-2. When you don't have a W-2, they underwrite each rental property individually. And so my tax return's like 2 inches thick. And so it's very painful for a mortgage broker to go through my tax returns and offer financing. Even though there's plenty of income there to do it, they also like to discount, maybe only give me 10 months of income instead of the 12. And I'm like, well, no, I keep these properties full, or my tenants don't like to move because I take care of them. They don't care. They have their underwriting rules. And then also they want to hold back 30% for vacancy, and so they whittle down what you can qualify. So it's a totally different ball game between just being a passive income person and a W-2 person.
Yeah. And, listen, this is not one size fits all. Leslie has built a fantastic lifestyle, and this is one component that helps her get to where she is. But it's not one size fits all. If you have questions about is debt better for you, is cash better for you, which will get you the most tax savings? Should you take your active income and hope to write that off? Those are great questions for either a CPA or for
Yep.
the JWB team. If it is your real estate plan and how we're going to achieve your outcome, reach out to JWB. If you have specific questions about writing off against your own taxes and, writing off against your active income, probably got to go to your CPA. However, let me give you just a couple of ground rules. Okay. There is in IRS world, there is active income and there's passive income. And you can only write off active income with active losses. You can only write off passive income with passive losses. Okay. So when we're talking about a turnkey rental property investment, this is a passive investment, which means you can only take passive losses, meaning write-offs, against your passive income. As with most things, there's a caveat that I'm going to share with you in just a second. But for the vast majority of us who are not active real estate investors, we are limited with writing off our passive losses against our passive gains. That means that example that I just gave you about rental income that's coming in, and you're able to write that off with your passive losses, your depreciation from your rental properties. So in that example, you can't take all this amazing depreciation that I just shared with you, $4, $5, $6, $7,000 of a write-off, and write off your W-2 income in that example, because your W-2 income is active income, active gains. Okay. The caveat to this is if you pass the test that the IRS has for you being an active real estate professional. If you pass that test, and there's a series of criteria to be able to do that, you have to be, I believe you have to have a real estate license. You have to work so many hundreds of hours a year in your real estate business. You really need to be an active real estate investor. Then you can take your passive losses and you can write them off against your active gains in a sense, because you are also an active real estate investor. So that's a general statement. Do not make financial decisions based on that CPA advice there. That is not CPA advice, but I hope that gives you just kind of a groundwork for our legendary composer there, Mr. John Williams. Understand passive and understand active. We've got a few other questions here, Leslie. So Elsa Faciane, new name, I believe. Elsa, thank you so much for being here and for being brave enough to put a question in. She said, is there any way you can list in the chat what you just mentioned as far as deductions? It went a little fast. Well, I don't think I can put it in the chat right now, but Leslie and I can talk a little bit about those deductions. You can write off your property management fees. You can write off your maintenance costs. You can write off your interest expense. You can write off your property taxes. You can write off your property insurance costs. With some limitations, you have to do it the right way, but you can write off travel expenses. And there's a bunch of other ones that you might not have even thought of. So I bet, Elsa, you could probably just do a Google search or a ChatGPT search, and you'll probably get 75% of the way there. And if you have any other questions, I would say ask in the chat if they haven't already answered your questions, or keep coming up on the show. Keep asking. We'll get you all the information that you need, Elsa. Did I miss anything there, Leslie?
Jay said in the chat that the IRS document P527 is a good reference for what you can deduct, and it explains depreciation in detail.
Love it. Love it. Thank you so much, Jay. All right. From our friend from France, Anonymous Attendee.
Okay.
Anonymous says, so when you have a property fully paid off for less stress, is it better to take money out to buy more, and will they all get paid in return? I'm not sure I fully understand the question. Did you?
Well, that's kind of what I did. I said my one Denver rental house had 3 baby rental houses in Jacksonville.
Mhm.
So I had a free and clear property here in Denver, and your property will appreciate or depreciate regardless of whether or not you have a mortgage on it. Because the value of a rental house is all about supply and demand and what's going on in your local market. So by leveraging yourself and using the tax advantage savings that the government provides, you can refinance that property tax free. and you're not taxed. It's unlike selling a stock to get your investment money. So you'll put a mortgage on your free and clear rental house, and then you'll reinvest that in additional rental houses. So your gross income goes up, but depending on what your monthly income, it might go down depending on the mortgages that you get or whatever. If you want to put a mortgage on something that's free and clear. So now you have a mortgage to pay on that, and you buy another rental house free and clear in a less expensive market like Jacksonville is probably for most of us, then you might have enough rental income from the second house to totally pay the mortgage off of the first house. And then you have two little, what I like to call golden eggs working for you.
I
That's
love
how I
it.
look at
I,
it.
I thought that was a perfect explanation. Now I totally understand the question. And, you know, the it goes back to this concept that I think it's really important to keep reinforcing is that it's hard to build up equity. It's hard to build up, call it profit. It's a real accomplishment to do that. But when you get there, if you just have equity sitting in your investment property or in your primary home or in anything, if you just have equity sitting there, your return on equity is zero. And if you still have big financial goals and you're sitting here with a ton of equity sitting there, not doing anything for you, you're making it harder for yourself to accomplish those goals. We can put a strategy together where you can tap into that equity and start to put it to work for you. Your equity, your dollars, your profit that you've earned is a tool. And if you have goals that you need to get to a certain place that is not where you are today, you should use the tools and the resources. And one way to do that is just like Leslie has done, is to use a cash out refinance. We also did a show not too long ago about leveraging that equity through a home equity line of credit, which is now available on investment properties. We have talked a little bit about, Leslie even mentioned doing a 1031 exchange is something she learned along her journey. That's another way of tapping into equity for properties that might be in a disadvantaged market and taking those properties and moving it over to Jacksonville. So this concept that it took a long time for me to understand it too. So I want to keep saying it. I will say it thousands and thousands more time, but your return on equity is zero. And if you're just letting it sit there, you're not using it responsibly, it's like you're trying to get to that next level with tying one hand behind your back is the way I kind of think about it. So if
Another
you want to learn
aspect.
about how, if you want to learn about how to tap into that equity, and if you want to learn about how put a plan together to do that, reach out to our team. You can text our team at 904-293-0341, 904-293-0341. My team is standing by right now. You can send a text, talk to a real person, get your question answered, set up a time to speak with us, and we can walk you through that. Leslie, I'm sorry. I know you have something you wanted to add there.
No, Karen Lindstrom in the chat just said that also with putting a mortgage on a free and clear property, you actually lower your potential liability risk. Because one of the things during the downturn in the housing crisis in, what was it, 2010, 2011, the houses that the banks were foreclosing on the quickest were the ones that had a lot of equity built up in them because it was a profit incentive for them. The poor people who owned the house lost their job. They couldn't make their mortgage payment. It went into arrears. Those were the houses that they foreclosed on. Also, the slip and fall guy that hires the lawyer who is looking to sue you, they get really excited when they see a lot of equity just sitting in there. And so that's one of the ways that you can reduce your potential liability is putting a mortgage on something. So it just leaves less money hanging out for somebody to potentially try to go after.
It does. I think a reframing about how we understand debt is really important. And there's good debt and there's bad debt. If we can
Right.
overcome this fear that's been
Fear
instilled in us of what debt is, it opens up an entire world for us where we can accomplish things we might not have been able to accomplish without it, and we still can do it responsibly. Rental properties allow you to do that.
is good debt versus bad debt. Like going into debt to take a vacation, consumer things, buying stuff, that's not that's bad debt.
There you go.
But going into debt with a mortgage to have an appreciating asset like a rental house, that's good debt that will pay many dividends.
We've got one of our longtime clients, great friend of the community, Mike Foster, asking Leslie concerning tax savings. I just recently heard, though I'm having difficulty verifying, that when an investor uses a non-recourse loan to purchase a rental property in an IRA and therefore must pay UBIT, which is unrelated business income tax each year when selling, that if your IRA pays down the loan over the years, your IRA will still owe will owe proportionally less UBIT after selling, and $0 UBIT if selling after the loan is completely paid off. Can either you or anyone else on this call confirm whether this is actually true? If true, that would be a major tax savings for JWB investors buying through their IRA. All right, there's a whole lot of tax stuff in there and jargon. I don't know how comfortable you feel taking a stab at that one. Leslie, you want to give it a shot? I can jump in there if you'd like.
Yeah, I was a little bit too afraid when I changed my 401k and IRA into self-directed form. I was a little bit too afraid to invest in real estate. I wanted to do tax liens or private money lending. Those were simpler. I could understand that. Also, I would look for someone who is not just a tax accountant. They add up the debits and credits. I would look for a tax strategist or a tax planner because that's really, I think, what you're after is somebody that can look at the big picture of what you're trying to do, especially in the IRA. That's
Yeah.
about all I know.
UBIT's a tricky thing. There's not a whole lot of people out there that truly understand UBIT. I have a decent sense of it. But Mike, I think this is a great question for somebody who is a little bit more knowledgeable on it than me. I get what you're saying. What you're saying is if you get a loan in your IRA, then you have to pay unrelated business income tax. It's a special loan just for taking out, it's a special tax basically just for taking out a loan in your IRA. And you're saying, well, if you get it paid off, that loan paid off before you sell, do you pay $0 of UBIT? I don't know the answer. I don't know the proportional thing. But what I do know, Mike, is that there are strategies to avoid UBIT altogether. A solo 401k is one investment vehicle that you can avoid UBIT and you can take out loans. You can take out loans in your IRA. So that would be my first guiding light is maybe we can have you get it out of your IRA, put it into another investment vehicle that doesn't require that you pay UBIT. And then this becomes a moot question because you didn't have to worry about it at all. But I'd say this is probably a little bit more technical and probably want to go to your CPA for that one. And if you need a good recommendation, Mike, on a good CPA, just hit up our team and we'll be happy to pass along a good one for you.
Yeah.
All right, we've got man, a few more questions here. Well, I think what we're going to do is we're going to jump into Leslie's client success story. So you guys can see the success that client or that Leslie has really lived out here. And then we'll do our best to answer a few questions at the end if we have time. But man, thank you guys for jumping in and hitting us up with some really incredible questions. Man, what a community we have, huh, Leslie?
Yeah, really. Great questions.
All right, all right. So let me see if I can share this screen. Can you see the screen, Leslie?
Yep. Yep.
All right. Look at that. Look at that sweatshirt you're wearing.
I have it in green too.
The funniest thing, I found this picture in our Facebook group, which if you'd like to be connected with us over Facebook, there's the Not Your Average Investor Facebook group. And so I found this picture and I said, oh, this is perfect because this is the picture that we took when you were here for Summit not too long ago. Well, I don't know if everybody knows, but I'm colorblind here. So when I saw Leslie jump on the show right before we went on here, she's like, I'm wearing my sweatshirt. And I'm like, is that the same color that you're wearing today? She's like, no, I have this in multiple colors. So this is how Leslie lives. Excuse me while I travel the world. And I just think this is it's inspirational for people to hear your story. I think it's even more inspirational when they get to know you as a person, because I think many people like the idea of being retired. They like the idea of being able to travel the world, but to see somebody who is so humble, so kind, so unassuming. Like, I don't think people really know what a real estate investing badass you are because you're so kind and unassuming. But I think people after watching this show should know now. So thank you for being you. We're going to jump right into your story here. Again, as always, we are using real numbers here. And these returns are actually Leslie's returns, but that doesn't mean it's going to be your returns when you invest with us. JWB is not a financial advisor. This is not financial planning. So do your own diligence. Let this be the start of your investing journey, but surround yourself with those who you trust when you make a decision. And now that that's out of the way, Leslie, here are your 10 properties. This is all the information. I know it's really small data and all that. We're going to jump into the big things here. But Leslie, you started to invest with 4 properties at the end of 2021. That was from July through December of 2021. You bought your first 4 properties. Can you talk about your mindset? Like what flipped the switch and you were like, okay, cool. I know I've been burned in the past in real estate. I feel good about Greg and JWB and to buy 4 in a short period of time.
Well, that's where I did my cash out refinance for my 2 most expensive Denver rental properties. And then I also did a cash out refinance for my primary residence. So I was able to get a fixed 30-year mortgage at 2.75% to assemble my investment money. And then on my rental properties, I was able to get a fixed 30-year note at 3.5% because I watched interest rates, and interest rates are always a moving target. They go up, they go down. And so I thought, wow, at the end of 2020, we're coming out of the pandemic, 2021, they were really worried that the economy was going to go into a recession. So they were trying to motivate people to spend money. And one of the quickest ways that the federal government uses is with interest rates. So I thought, I watched them go down and I thought, geez, I don't think they're going to be this low. So I better get busy. And in hindsight, I wish I'd mortgaged up everything that I had here in Denver. But because I, was just getting to know Greg, I thought, well, okay, if I get, this pile of money together, I think it was like $400,000, that ought to get me started. And so that's why I bought the 4. And then it's like M&Ms. You can't just have one. You just have to get more. And so, because I like free and clear real estate, I decided I took an advantage in December of 2022 of an incentive. And I borrowed money out of my permanent life insurance policy. So I have a fixed 5% interest rate on that. So that's using a concept called bank on yourself, where instead of paying someone else, paying a mortgage company, I am my own lender. So I pay back my life insurance policy at a rate of 5% on that. So that's why I did just the cash purchase. And then the last ones were the 3-pack. I was very motivated to do that. So I did a cash out refinance on another Denver property that I had purchased 10 years prior during the housing downturn. And that property has more than doubled in value. So, but I'm paying like 5.75, 6% on those. So,
So
um,
cool. So cool for you to talk about your mindset going through this because I think this is a not your average mindset, right? Let's look at the real numbers here. You went from purchasing properties at $127,000 with an interest rate of, call it 2.7% or 3%. And you continued to buy properties at the end of 2024, the purchase prices doubled, the interest rates doubled. But you mentioned that you were even more excited to buy those properties then. Can you explain that to somebody who might not understand why you're even more excited to buy properties today?
well, I'm turning 65 in May, and I'm trying to get myself, even though I have been retired for since I was 44, meaning that I didn't need to get out of bed and go to a job, a W-2 job anymore. I had enough passive income to pay my bills. And then it was like, okay, now what? What do I do with my time? What do I and I decided, oh, I want to go traveling. Well, that takes a little bit of money. And so just being financially free wasn't enough. And so once I understood all the ways to make income from rental houses, I decided that I needed a bigger portfolio. And I thought, you can always refinance if you have a higher interest rate mortgage, especially now with the products that they have. The last three properties, I purchased them with a debt service income ratio, debt
Hmm.
DS. Is that what?
DSCR,
Yeah.
right?
So where they just underwrite the rental house and the lease agreement that you have on that rental house, because trying to underwrite me personally was getting to be a nightmare in that to get a Fannie Mae or a Freddie Mac mortgage, granted the interest rate was a little bit lower, but it was very painful to do because the underwriter would have to underwrite every single rental property that I have. And now I'm up to 21. And so you can imagine the time that it takes, all the documentation, 2 months worth of bank statements, and I probably have 15 different bank accounts for different things. So this debt service income ratio loan, even though the interest rate was a little bit more, was so much easier because now I've got my golden egg planted in Jacksonville and it will continue to earn capital appreciation, mortgage rate, the interest deduction, the principal pay down. It'll be a hedge against inflation because if prices go up, we just raise the rent. And so I thought it was important at this time in my life to get my golden eggs planted. So that's why I did
Amazing.
it.
I mean, that is such a not your average mindset, but you see all these elements that we've been able to listen and learn from Leslie on the show coming together, right? She talked about early on how the team was most important for her when she's making the decision. Well, for her, she knew that she had to find the right team, and she found that team in Jacksonville here. She talked about how her goals dictate her actions. So she said, I want this type of lifestyle. I'm going to go and add more assets to my portfolio. That's effective planning. We're not trying to buy X number of houses, whether that's more or less. We're trying to be outcome focused. We understand what our goals are. Then we fill the portfolio based on what our goals are. And if our goals change and we have more income that we need, well, guess what? We add more properties and that team helps you get there. And then it's this concept of repurposing your capital, right? Your return on your equity is zero. If you just let it sit there, there's no way that Leslie would be able to live the lifestyle that she is. She took the money that was in equity and other properties that weren't performing the way she wanted, and she repurposed it. And now she's been able to grow that. And it all ends up with her having two versions of the most awesome sweatshirt that I've seen in a while.
Well, my goal is to never sell. One of the Rich Dad advisors, Robert Kiyosaki, his real estate advisor when he started out was a New Zealander named Dolph DeRuse. And his attitude was never sell. If you need money, just put a mortgage on it or do a refinance or home equity line of credit. There never should be a reason that you actually sell. And if you do sell, please make sure you do a 1031 exchange so that you don't get hit with that capital gains tax.
100%. We got to break down the fear of selling after you pass, or the fear of passing along your assets to your heirs after you pass. There's this fear of leaving rental properties like it's not a responsible thing to do to leave that for your next generation. There are so many advantages to doing that. That a reframing of that I think would really help people as well. All
Especially
right,
because your heirs get a stepped up cost basis. So I
exactly.
may have bought that first rental house for 127, but over time it might grow to 250,000 and my heir who would inherit that house will get a cost basis of 250,000. So it's a great thing.
I don't know if you guys caught that, but that is so powerful. The step up in basis, we won't have time to jump into that on the show today, but just chat GPT, step up in basis and rental properties, and your minds will explode. It is an incredible opportunity for
It's
us out
another
there.
tax savings.
It is. It is. There's so much more than we had time to get into on the show today. But Leslie, here is your total return on investment by profit center. This is what we look at every single time we get to do a client journey. And it looks incredible, Leslie. You should be so proud of yourself. And it also is very consistent. There's a couple of things that we see here. All right. A high rate of return. Leslie, your assets have returned 19% a year. Your money is working for you 19% a year. And that's a combination of not just net rental income, it's all profit centers. And here we list four of them. We don't list inflation hedging because it can be somewhat complicated. So we only list four of the five here, but between those four, you've earned over $399,000 in total profits for your 10 rental properties. Congratulations.
Hey, more trips, more trips.
More trips, more trips. This is how she's doing it. Of that, we need to understand how are we creating success here? Well, it comes down to which of these profit centers is going to drive your long-term success. And that's why choosing a growth market like Jacksonville is so important. Well, home price appreciation is the biggest contributor to Leslie's success for her wealth pie, just like it has been for every client we have been able to bring on this show, just like it is for every client's portfolios, the over $1 billion that I manage of rental property portfolios. Every single client's portfolios look very similar to Leslie's here as far as their wealth pie. Between 60 to 80% of your total wealth pie will come from home price appreciation because you chose the right market. In addition to that, there's principal pay down, which Leslie's now a big fan of principal pay down, right?
Yes.
There you are. You've got tax savings here, which tax savings is the concept of the show. And here, when we, and truth be told, when we estimate tax savings for our clients, we estimate it low because we don't know everybody's specific tax scenario. So, Leslie, I would imagine you feel like your tax savings are way higher than $8,000. Is that pretty
Absolutely.
accurate?
Yes.
So, and we can get more into that. If you have questions about how tax savings is estimated, jump on the phone with our team. And this is something that's available for all of our clients. You get this. You can log into your portal at any time and see this, and it's updated quarterly for you. And then there's net rental income of $43,000. Not too shabby there for providing that net rental income. And you've only been a client for less than 4 years now. Just think, you're able to put in over $900,000, but you've already earned about 400,000 of that. You've created this wonderful money tree, is what you have. And as we start to think about what retirement really should be viewed as, it's how are you planting seeds that are going to continue to produce profits and income for you through retirement, rather than just trying to get to this big number to like ING used to tell us in the commercials they used to have. This is the money tree that Leslie's created, and it's creating quite a lifestyle for yourself. Can you tell us the coolest thing that you've done lately, the best trip that you've taken, Leslie?
Oh gosh. Well, there's so many of them actually. I mean, probably when I took a trip to Antarctica because I was worried with climate change that it's all going to melt and I'm not going to get to see the penguins and all that. And that was a $10,000 trip. But the funny thing was, it was a singles trip. And so I thought, I'm a single lady. Maybe I'll meet somebody out in my travels somewhere. So I signed up for this singles trip to Antarctica. And I thought, I want somebody who's financially capable. So this was an expensive trip. The funniest thing is there were only two guys on the entire trip of 25. All the rest were women, which I thought was really funny.
Oh, that's hilarious. Well, you know what? I bet you were quite the successful real estate entrepreneur. I don't know if anybody could touch you, whether there was men or women on that trip.
Well, we had a NASA scientist on the trip. We had some very high income single ladies on the trip. And the nice thing about travel is that you will meet people you would never meet in any other life journey than you would as you would on a trip. So
Well,
that's been exciting.
Well, that is super awesome. We have a bunch of questions. We're not going to have time to get to them all, but you want to do a little rapid fire with us, Leslie? Just try
Sure.
to get a few questions answered here. So we've got a couple of them are very similar. So Steve Holcomb asked, do you have to qualify as a real estate professional to get the most tax benefits? The answer is yes. And just look up what those requirements are and talk to your CPA to see if you can qualify already or what you would need to do.
And one
Um,
of the things I would say is I qualify to write off any active income that I have because I was actively involved in my Denver rental properties.
Mm,
So, but I don't want to work that hard now. So that's why I have JWB. But that's why I keep a little something close to home that I can just drive by and
there you go.
visit, and work on.
Yep. And when it comes to your returns on investment, we always assume you're not an active investor. So if you do happen to have that status, your tax savings and your total returns on investment are only higher. It's an under promise and over deliver moment when it comes to your reporting for you. So hopefully you can get there, but if not, your returns are
Still
perfect the way
good.
they are. um, Question from Anonymous Attende. My question is, how do I use my 401k to invest in rental properties? Anonymous, I would encourage you to reach out to my team. You can just send an email to info@JWB Companies. You can send us a text at 904-293-0341. Happy to have that conversation and point you in the right direction there. Alex Diaz says, I bought 3 JWBs, turnkey rental properties, with 1 property equity refinance and
Huh?
3 more JWB properties from JWB Equity HELOC. So that is super cool. Was able to repurpose the capital from something that maybe wasn't performing as well as they liked, and then put it into his first portfolio with JWB rental properties. And then it sounds like that built up enough equity. And then he was able to tap into that again and buy 3 more JWB rental properties. Alex, congratulations. Fantastic job. We might have a seat for you on Client Journey coming up here pretty soon, Alex. Um, Jim Kirko, the Hall of Fame first baseman, says, Greg, I have an idea. How about you go back in time to 3% interest rates and allow us all to redo the last 4 years? Lesson learned, the best time to start investing, if not
Yesterday.
mid-COVID, is today. Here's the thing, Hall of Famer, that was a special time for interest rates, and we're probably never going to see that again. But there is an equally exciting time to be investing specifically in Jacksonville today. If you didn't see the quarterly market update that I just did last week, you got to watch it, because what I do think is that 2025 is a special time specifically in Jacksonville. You have a lot of things that are working in unison that I think people are going to be set up for above average returns, just like you were back in the day. It's just a different reason. So go back and watch that show. And
And
thank you all.
don't be afraid of high interest rates because you can refinance in the future. And that's just more interest deduction that you get. Sorry.
Yeah, I agree. And Leslie, you've been in the game for so long. Tell me if you agree with this. You know, at every point in time, there's a reason to not do it. And then you look back and you say, oh, it would have been so much easier if I just would have done that. And so, whatever that reason today is, I guarantee you, it might be that downtown Jacksonville is going to revitalize and that you're going to see this big appreciation gain, which is what we believe at JWB. It's our investment thesis. You might be saying, well, it's really tough for me to make that decision. 5 years from now, you're going to look back and say, oh, geez, the stats were there. We saw what was happening. I saw it at Summit. I wish I would have just bought everything in 2025. And in 2025, we'll be playing the same game. So when you find something that makes sense, accumulate assets managed by a great team in a growth market, and you're going to be successful just like Leslie. So
Well, and I can tell you, you can trust JWB because I've been around the block with these real estate education guys and I've trusted them. I used to hand them all my trust. And unfortunately, once I find the right team, I waited 5 years to pull the trigger. So I just watched the real estate prices go up. And with what the downtown Jacksonville partnership has planned, we're going to see some amazing returns just on the capital gains portion.
I agree. I agree completely. And you know what? We're going to have you back to share your success because you made those decisions. You took that leap of faith. You continue to invest in yourself and to share your story. So, Leslie, thank you so much for being here. Did you have fun on the show?
I did. I did. It's great. I recommend it.
How could you not? You have such an amazing community here. I know they've been giving you love all in the chat and in the questions. Thank you all for being here. It is never lost on us that you take an hour out of your day in the middle of a Tuesday to come and hang out and even talk taxes with us here. Thank you for supporting Leslie. Thank you for supporting the show. We have an incredible show next week as well. So I hope you come back, especially if this is your first time. I hope you come back, make this a home. every Tuesday at 12:30. So next week, we're going to be diving in. Redfin recently released a report saying that investor purchases are down and that investors are pulling back. And we're going to dive in. We're going to add some data, some perspective. Are they really pulling back? What does that mean? And should you pull back? You guys kind of know where I'm going to land there. But it's going to be a great show next Tuesday. And until then, Leslie, you want to send them off?
Sure. Don't be average.
See ya.
Bye, everybody.